The great hall of the Hegemony Council sat high above the trade worlds, floating in the empty space between stars. The chamber was built to show power. Massive walls stretched up for hundreds of feet. Lights from distant nebulae shone through the transparent dome at the ceiling. 5 ancient species had built this place together 10,000 years ago, and they had kept the other species in line ever since. Counselor Vex from the race watched the younger aliens walk into the meeting chamber. The commander, General, moved like a predator. His scales were dark blue, almost black, and his claws clicked against the floor with each step. Behind him came Ambassador, who carried the authority to speak for the entire empire. The meeting was called to discuss the human problem. Humans? The word made Vex think of something wild and unpredictable. Just 500 years ago, humans had only reached their own moon. Now they were spreading across the galaxy. They built ships and colonies and trading posts. They made friends with other young races. They asked questions instead of accepting orders. This made the old powers nervous. Ambassador stepped forward. His voice was sharp and cold like metal. The humans grow bold. They claim territories that belong to the Council. They ignore our laws. They refuse to pay taxes to the hegemony. This behavior must end. Counselor Vex listened carefully. The human expansion was fast, yes, but it was not aggressive. Humans had never attacked the old powers. They worked in space that other species had left empty. General spoke next. They are primitive, carbon-based animals. My ships could flatten their entire navy in a single day. They have no real weapons. They have no advanced technology. Why do we waste time talking about them? The counselor agreed. General speaks truth. Humans are weak. We should destroy them before they become a real problem. One swift strike and the issue is solved. The representative leaned back in his chair. Destruction is too quick and wastes resources. Better to blockade their worlds, starve them, force them to surrender. Then we use them as labor. They breed fast. They can work in places that would kill our people. Humans have value as slaves. Counselor Vex raised his hand. The chamber grew quiet. Vex was old, older than any living being in the room. His skin was thin and pale, and his eyes were large and dark. When he spoke, beings listened. I see danger here, Vex said slowly. Danger that none of you understand. Danger? General laughed. His laugh sounded like stones breaking. The human danger is nothing. We have weapons that can level mountains. We have ships that can cross galaxies. How is this danger? Vex closed his eyes. He had seen 100 wars. He had watched young species grow and fail. He knew something that the others did not know. Humans are not dangerous because of their weapons, Vex said. Humans are dangerous because they are creative. They are dangerous because they refuse to accept the impossible. They are dangerous because they love their families more than they love their lives. The chamber was silent. You speak riddles, the said with anger. Speak clearly, old one. Vex opened his eyes. I speak warning. Humans have lived on a harsh world, a world with weather that kills, earthquakes, volcanoes, disease. Their sun tries to burn them. Their water tries to freeze them. Every day on Earth is a fight for survival. This has made humans different from us. They do not give up. They do not surrender. When they face death, they do not break. They find new ways to fight. General stood. His claws dug into the armrest of his chair. This is foolish talk. I will take my fleet and crush the humans. When I return, we will have new slaves and this debate will end. No one stopped him as he left the chamber. Vex watched him go and said nothing. He was old. He had learned that sometimes words meant nothing. The young always had to learn their own lessons. Far below, on a world that orbited a yellow sun, a woman named was about to receive a message that would change everything. Was the captain of a ship called the Independence. She was strong and smart. Her face was weathered from years in space. Her hair was short and dark. She did not smile much because she did not have much reason to smile. The universe was hard, and it did not care about human feelings. The Independence was on a mission to check on the human mining colony on 452b. The colony had been there for 30 years. It was built underground to protect from solar radiation. Thousands of humans lived there. They pulled metals and rare minerals from the ground. These materials were sold to other species and to other human worlds. Sat in the captain's chair on the bridge of her ship. Around her, her crew worked at their stations. Lieutenant James was at the helm, flying the ship with skill learned from 10 years of service. Dr. Stephen Park ran the science station. He was quiet and focused. He understood things about space and stars that most humans would never comprehend. Engineer sat at the engineering station, watching the ship's power systems and engines. Her job was to keep the Independence flying, and she was the best there was. Tactical officer stood at his station. His job was to watch for danger. He had done this job for 15 years and had never slept well since. The radio crackled. A voice came through, broken and full of fear. Independence, this is Colony Command. Do you hear me? We are under attack. I repeat, we are under attack. Sat up straight in her chair. This is Independence. What is your situation? The voice on the radio was harder to understand now. There were sounds in the background, loud sounds, explosions. Large ships, they are ships. They came out of nowhere. They are demanding surrender. If we do not submit to their control, they say they will destroy everything. The blockade is complete. No ships can enter or leave the planet. Approximately 3,000 people are in the underground colony. Another 400 are in orbit at the station. We need help. Please send help. Looked at her officers. She did not need to speak. They all knew what she was thinking. The Independence was a good ship, but it was not a warship. It had no real weapons. It had shields that could block radiation and small debris. It had no way to fight a battle fleet. How many ships? Asked. At least 40 capital ships, the voice said, plus smaller vessels. We do not know the exact number. Their commander is demanding we respond to their ultimatum within 1 hour. Captain, if no help is coming, we need to know now. Cut the transmission. She looked at each of her crew members. His face was hard. He knew what 40 ships meant. The humans had no chance against that force. Set course for 452b, said. Maximum speed. Captain said, that is suicide. We cannot fight 40 ships. Did not look at him. She looked at the star map showing their position and the colony's position. We are not going to fight them, she said. We are going to save our people. The Independence jumped to faster-than-light speed and headed toward the fight that would change the galaxy forever. 1 hour later, the fleet opened fire on the colony. The commander-general stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastator. His claws were folded across his chest. He watched the colony below with no expression on his face. Humans were so fragile, so easy to break. He had expected them to surrender immediately when they saw his fleet. They had not. This annoyed him. The Devastator was the size of a small moon. Its weapons could destroy a planet if given enough time. Around it, 39 other warships hung in orbit above 452b. The blockade was complete. No human ship could escape. No supply vessel could reach the planet. The humans below had 1 hour to surrender everything they had and accept rule. Had sent his ultimatum through every radio frequency. The humans had heard his words. They had heard the power in his voice. He expected fear. He expected surrender. Instead, the radio had gone silent. The humans were not responding. Send the message again, ordered. His second-in-command captain stood ready. Yes, sir. Broadcasting now. They have 45 minutes until the deadline. Down in the colony stood in the central control room. The space was large and filled with screens and computers. Engineers and technicians worked at their stations. Around her, alarms rang. Red lights flashed. The ships were very close now. Soon they would start firing. Very soon. Had called an emergency meeting with the colony's leaders. They sat around a metal table. all of them looking at her and waiting for answers. Governor Hayes had led the colony for 10 years. He was older with gray hair and tired eyes. Next to him sat Dr. Robert Stone, who ran the science operations. There was Maria, who managed the food production. Henry led the security teams. They were all looking at now. "They want us to surrender in 45 minutes, said. She kept her voice steady and strong. "If we do, they will take control of the colony. They will take our resources. They will probably enslave us or kill us." "We have no choice," said. His voice was heavy. "We cannot fight them. We do not have weapons. We do not have ships to match theirs. Surrender is the only option." Shook her head. "No, surrender is not the only option." Everyone looked at her like she was crazy. "We have something they do not expect," said. "We have people who do not want to die. We have engineers who know how to build things and fix things. We have a colony built underground where their weapons cannot reach us easily. And we have time if we use it right." Dr. Robert Stone leaned forward. "What are you saying, Captain?" Pointed to a map of the colony displayed on the screen. "The mining operation uses massive lasers to cut through rock. We have several dozen of them. The power comes from the geothermal core beneath the colony. If we reroute the power systems, we might be able to make those lasers into weapons. Not good weapons. Not weapons that match their ships, but weapons that could do damage." "That is insane," said. "Even if we could do this, it would take days to reconfigure the systems. We have less than an hour." "Not all the systems," said. "Just a few. Enough to make them think twice about attacking. Enough to buy time." Henry spoke for the first time. "Buy time for what?" Looked at him. "To fight back, not with weapons, with brains, with strategy, with the things that humans are actually good at." Engineer, who had been standing in the corner of the room, stepped forward. She had been listening quietly. "I can do it," she said. "I can redirect the geothermal power to the surface laser arrays, but I need people to help me, and I need to work now." Nodded. "You have whoever you need." The next hour was chaos, and her team ran through the tunnels and tunnels of the colony. They cut cables. They rewired panels. They bypassed safety systems that had kept humans safe for decades. Above, the deadline came and passed. The bombardment began. Explosions rocked the surface of 452B. The ships fired their weapons at the colony buildings on the surface. But the buildings were not important. The important things were buried deep underground. The 3,000 humans in the colony huddled in the deep shelters. Children cried. Adults tried to comfort them. Everyone waited to see if they would live or die. Dr. Stephen Park worked in the control center, watching the power systems. He was sweating. His fingers moved across the keyboards. "We have power," he said into the radio. 5 seconds. 5 seconds was all they needed. The laser arrays on the surface suddenly came alive. Bright beams of coherent light shot upward at the ships. The beams were not very powerful compared to weapons, but they were concentrated. They were focused. They struck the shields of the ships. General felt his ship lurch. His bridge shook. Alarm sounded. "Report," he screamed. "Sir, we are being attacked," Captain said. "Small weapons, but they are hitting our shields. The humans have modified their mining equipment." Was shocked and angry. The humans were supposed to be helpless. They were supposed to surrender. Instead, they were fighting back. Sat in the tactical control room with his small team of volunteer fighters. They had no military training, but they understood how to defend their home. He spoke into the radio, directing people where to go, where to prepare, how to position themselves for what was coming next. "All units, this is command," he said. "The attack is starting. Stay calm. Remember your training, protect your families, protect your neighbors. We will not surrender to these creatures." The colony did not have much, but what it had, it used well. Stood in the control center and watched the fleet above. They were still massive, still powerful, still far more dangerous than anything the humans had, but for the first time they were hurt. For the first time, the humans had struck back. "They are moving," said. She was watching the sensor displays. "The fleet is forming up. They are preparing for a major attack." Closed her eyes for a moment. She knew this was coming. They would not tolerate resistance. They would burn the colony from orbit if they could not take it intact. But the humans had a few more tricks to play. They had one more day before the colony's supplies would force them to really surrender. One day was not much, but it was enough time to believe that maybe, just maybe, the impossible might be possible. The assault came at midnight. The colony's time clocks showed 000 when General gave the order to attack with full force. This was not a gentle bombardment. This was destruction. This was war. 50 missiles fell from the sky at once. The underground shelters shook so badly that people fell off their seats. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Children screamed. Mothers held their children tight. In the deep places, people prayed to whatever god they believed in and hoped that the stone and metal above them would hold strong enough to keep them alive. But was not in the shelters hiding. She was in the control center watching the attack happen in real time. The displays showed the ships moving closer. Their shields were flickering from the laser attacks. The humans had hit them. The humans had hurt them. Not much, but it was something. Said into the radio, status on the pulse device. Was in the engineering section, 3 levels below the control center. She had been working on the plan for the last 12 hours. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It would probably not work. But it was the only plan they had. "Charging now," said. Her voice was calm and focused. "The capacitors are full. We can send out the pulse in 2 minutes." What had created was simple but clever. She had taken the geothermal core's power and routed it through the colony's electrical systems. Then she had designed a way to release all of that power at once, in a burst of electromagnetic radiation. The pulse would not be strong enough to destroy the ships, but it might be strong enough to damage their shields and their electronic systems. "Do it," said. There was a moment of silence. Then the entire colony lurched as if the ground beneath it had been hit by a giant hammer. The lights flickered. For just a second, everything went dark. Then the emergency power kicked in and the lights came back. Above, something impossible happened. The shield generators on 4 of the ships failed at the same time. Their shields flickered and died. For a few seconds, the ships were completely exposed. The captains did not believe what they were seeing. General's flagship was not one of the ships that was hit directly, but even so, his systems were damaged. Sparks fell from the ceiling on his bridge. His weapons control systems were offline. His communication system was working, but barely. "All ships, this is command," sent the message across the fleet. "Shields are down. All ships, pull back and restart your systems. Focus on the shield generators first." The fleet pulled away from the planet, regrouping and fixing the damage that the humans had caused. It was only a temporary victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The humans had forced them to stop and think. They had made them respect them, at least a little bit. But knew the truth. The pulse had used almost all of the colony's geothermal power. They could not do it again. In maybe 6 hours, the shields would be back up. In maybe 6 hours, they would attack again, and this time they would not hold back. Gathered her team. James, Stephen Park, and stood in front of her in the control room. Around them, the colony's leaders watched and waited. "We need to do something bold," said. "Something they will not expect." "Like what?" asked. Pointed at the display showing the fleet. "We need to destroy their command ship. Without their leadership, the fleet will fall apart." Everyone in the room stared at her. She was asking for suicide. She was asking them to volunteer for a mission that had no chance of success. "How?" Stephen asked. "We have no fighters. We have no missiles that can pierce their shields." Had already thought about this. "We do not need big weapons. We need people. We need to infiltrate the command ship, find their computer core, and plant explosives there." "That is insane," said. But even as she said it, she was thinking about how it could be done. That was the thing about engineers. They could imagine solutions that seemed impossible. James stepped forward. "I will go," he said. "I volunteered to join this colony knowing the risks. I volunteer now to do this." Stephen Park was next. "If you are going, I am coming with you. You will need someone who understands their technology." Then came two others. Maria had been a construction worker on Earth. She was small and fast and good at moving through tight spaces. Henry had worked in the mining industry for 30 years. He understood structural engineering better than almost anyone in the colony. "We have a transport pod in the captured equipment section," said. "It is small. You might be able to pilot it. You might be able to get close enough to the command ship without being noticed." Might said, "You are asking us to risk everything on Might." "Yes," said I am. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then nodded. "I will stay here and make sure the systems work for you when you need them. I will be your support team." The next 2 hours were spent preparing. Stephen studied the schematics of the command ship that they had captured in old military databases. Maria practiced moving through tight spaces quickly and quietly. Henry looked at the structural plans and identified weak points and pathways through the ship. James reviewed the stolen security codes for doors and hoped they were still current. When the time came, they walked to the transport pod together. The pod was sleek and dark, designed for speed and stealth, though doubted they had ever needed to use it that way. James took the pilot's seat. Stephen sat next to him. Maria and Henry sat in the back. "This is crazy," Henry said as they climbed in. He was smiling, though, smiling like a man who had finally found something worth doing. "Absolutely crazy," Maria agreed. She was checking the small weapons they had put together from scrap metal and the colony's tools. Not real weapons, but something. James powered up the pod. The engines hummed quietly. He checked the navigation system. The command ship was 3 kilometers away. Shields were back up and holding. They were preparing for another assault that would start in 30 minutes. "Here we go," James said. He guided the pod out of the colony's launch bay and into space. The stars spread out above them. The fleet hung in orbit like metal clouds ready to rain death on the world below. No one on the Devastator's bridge noticed the tiny transport pod moving through space. It was too small, too insignificant. They did not believe anything so small could matter. That was their first mistake. James guided the pod directly toward the command ship. There was a docking bay on the starboard side. It was protected, but it was also used regularly by officers and supply ships. The pod would look like it belonged there. It did. James got the docking codes from Stephen, who had hacked them from the stolen files. The docking bay doors opened. The pod slipped inside like a knife sliding between ribs. The 4 humans stepped out onto the deck of the command ship. Around them, soldiers walked back and forth, going about their duties. They noticed the new arrivals for maybe a second, then they ignored them. Why would they pay attention to what appeared to be 4 officers in uniform? The stolen uniforms that Stephen and had designed did not fool anyone who looked carefully. But they did not look carefully. Why would they need to? They had won every war for 1,000 years. They had never known defeat. James led his team through the corridors of the Devastator. Maria moved like smoke, sliding past anyone who might have noticed them. Stephen studied the layout and guided them toward the center of the ship, where the main computer core would be. Henry watched the walls and the corridors and understood how to move through space in ways that others did not think about. They climbed through maintenance shafts that Maria discovered because she was small enough to fit. They moved through air ducts that Henry realized were pathways. They avoided patrols because Stephen knew when they were coming. And finally, they reached the computer core. It was a massive space filled with towers of equipment. There were no guards. Why would there be? No one had ever threatened the command ship. Stephen planted the explosives while James kept watch. The explosives were not large, but they did not need to be. They were designed to overload the core systems, to create a cascade of failures that would destroy the ship's central brain. "Done," Stephen said. The timer started. They had 8 minutes to get out of the ship before the charges detonated. 8 minutes was not much time. But it was enough. The run back through the corridors felt longer than the journey in. Every step could be the one that got them caught. Every shadow could hide a soldier. Every turn in the corridor could lead them to a dead end or a patrol. Maria moved first, fast and silent like she was made of nothing but speed and determination. Henry followed, his heavy body moving with surprising grace for such a large man. Stephen kept checking a small device that showed him where the patrols were. James brought up the rear, watching their backs, making sure nothing surprised them from behind. Alarms started blaring when they had 3 minutes left. The soldiers on the ship did not understand what was happening at first. The alarms meant different things in different situations. Maybe it was a drill, maybe it was a ship malfunction. But then the computer voice started speaking in the language and all of them understood the same word: core failure, intrusion, sabotage. The Devastator's crew came alive like a hive of insects. Soldiers ran toward the center of the ship. Doors slammed shut to contain the damage. Within seconds, the ship was in total chaos. James and his team were still 2 sections away from the docking bay where they had left the transport pod. They ran now, not trying to hide anymore because hiding was impossible. A soldier spotted them at a corridor junction. It was large, almost 3 meters tall, with muscles like cables of metal. But James was fast and he was desperate. He dove under the arms as the alien tried to grab him. Maria used a metal pipe to hit the alarm panel, creating more chaos and confusion. Henry tackled another who tried to stop them. 2 minutes left. They reached the docking bay. The transport pod was still there. James got the engines running while the others piled inside. The docking bay doors started to close, sealing them in. They would have to ram through. James did not hesitate. He pushed the engines to maximum and the pod shot forward. The closing doors scraped metal from the pod's hull, but the small ship punched through and out into the vacuum of space. 1 minute left. Stephen was sending a message. His hands flew across the communication controls. He was broadcasting everything. The identity of the command ship. The fact that humans had infiltrated it. The fact that humans were fighting back. The message went out to every ship in the fleet. The message went out to all the listening stations in human-controlled space. The message went out to the galactic networks, where 1,000 different species could hear it. 30 seconds left. The Devastator's computer core could no longer function. The explosion started in the center of the ship and worked outward in a chain reaction. The massive warship, bigger than a small moon, began to break apart. The transport pod was clear of the blast radius when it happened, but everyone inside felt the shock wave push them forward. They lit up with the fire of the Devastator's death. General was on that ship, the most feared commander of the Empire, the warrior who had never lost a battle in his entire life, died when his flagship exploded in orbit above 452b. The fleet went crazy. Half of them tried to move into attack positions. The other half tried to regroup and understand what had happened. Without the central command ship, the fleet's organization fell apart. Captain, who had been the second in command, immediately took control of one of the remaining battleships. He sent out the order to stop firing and to hold position, but 3/4 of the fleet officers ignored the order. They had lost their supreme commander. They wanted revenge. But revenge required targets, and the humans were not on the surface anymore. The humans were in a small transport pod that was flying toward the planet's upper atmosphere. Watched the sensor displays as the Devastator blew apart. She felt something break open inside her chest. James was dead. Stephen Park was dead. Maria and Henry were dead. She had sent them to die and they had died. Then a voice came through the radio. It was broken and wrapped in static, but it was clear enough to understand. Independence, this is Strike Team. We are inbound, we are alive. Felt her knees go weak. She sat down in her chair. James's voice filled the control center. Around her, the colony's people began to cheer. They had heard the message. They understood what it meant. But more than that, they understood what the entire galaxy had just learned. The message that Stephen had sent before the Devastator exploded was still being transmitted. It was being repeated by relay stations. It was being broadcast across every species' networks. It was becoming history. The command ship has been destroyed, the message said, speaking in human voices. It was destroyed by humans infiltrating from inside. It was destroyed by human courage. It was destroyed by humans who refused to die as slaves. We are humans. We are not primitive. We are not weak. We do not surrender to threats. We do not accept slavery. We defend our people with whatever means we have. We defend each other. No one survives after facing humans, because we will fight until we win or until we die trying. On 100 worlds, people heard this message and suddenly realized that something had changed. The old order was breaking. The ancient powers were not untouchable. The fleet was disorganized and confused, but they were still strong. They still had weapons. They still had the ability to destroy the colony from orbit. But that was the thing that changed. They were not fighting a race that was simply trying to survive anymore. They were fighting a race that was willing to suicide bomb their own command ship rather than surrender. That knowledge spread through the fleet faster than any weapon. Officers started thinking about what other humans might do, what other crazy, desperate, impossible tactics they might use. The will to fight started dying in hearts. Within an hour, the fleet began to withdraw. Ships pulled away from the planet one by one. Captain ordered a full retreat. They could return with more ships later. They could return with reinforcements. But for now, they had to leave. The blockade was broken. The colony had survived. But more than that, something much larger had happened. In a single moment, humanity had proven that they were not a species to be controlled or conquered. They had proven that even the greatest powers in the galaxy could be hurt by humans who refused to give up. Stood on the observation deck and watched the last ship jump to faster-than-light speed and disappear from view. James and his team had made it back to the colony. They had landed the transport pod in the dock bay not an hour after the Devastator had exploded. They were walking toward her now, all of them, alive and walking and smiling like people who had come back from death itself. James reached her and did not say anything. He just nodded. Nodded back. Below them, the colony's people celebrated. They had won. They had lived. They had done the impossible. But they did not know yet that their victory would echo across the galaxy. They did not know yet that the message Stephen had sent would change everything. They did not know yet that they had just started something that would reshape the very structure of galactic power. The Hegemony Council chamber fell silent when the message arrived. All 5 counselors were present, watching the display screens showing news from across the galaxy. The Devastator had been destroyed. A command ship the size of a small moon had been reduced to burning wreckage, and it had been destroyed by humans. Counselor Vex was not shocked. He had warned them. He had told them that humans were different, that they were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of what was inside them, because of their refusal to accept defeat, because of their love for their families and their people. The counselor stood up from his seat, shaking with rage. This is impossible. They are one of the greatest military powers in the galaxy. How can they lose a battle to a species that did not even have space travel 500 years ago? The representative was already sending messages to his people. He was telling them to prepare for war. If humans could destroy ships, then humans were a threat to everyone. Every species in the galaxy would need to defend against them. But Counselor Vex raised his hand, and the chamber grew quiet. We were warned, Vex said. His voice was old and slow and heavy with the weight of years. I warned you about this. I told you that humans are not like other species. I told you that they do not think like we think. I told you that their creativity and their refusal to surrender would make them dangerous. Dangerous is an understatement, the counselor said. Her species was known for being logical and practical. If humans can destroy a warship with stolen equipment and improvised tactics, then they represent a threat to the stability of the entire galaxy. Vex nodded slowly. They represent a threat to the old order, but perhaps that is not a bad thing. The other counselors looked at him as if he had gone mad. Explain yourself, they said. Vex stood up slowly. His body was ancient and fragile, but his mind was still sharp. For 10,000 years, we have ruled the galaxy. We have kept the peace by keeping other species in their place. We have decided who could expand and who could not. We have decided who could have technology and who could not. We decided everything. He paused and looked at each counselor in turn. And we made mistakes, Vex said. We ruled through fear and force. We told ourselves that the younger species were not ready for freedom. We told ourselves that our way was the only way, but humans have shown us something different. Humans have shown us that even when they are weak, even when they have nothing, they will still fight for what they believe in. They will still defend their families. They will still choose death over slavery. There was thinking. Her alien face was still and emotionless, but Vex could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. You are suggesting we change our relationship with the younger species, she asked. I am suggesting that change is coming whether we choose it or not, Vex said. Humans have proven they cannot be controlled through force, so we have only one other option. We can either make enemies of them or we can make partners of them. 3 days later, a message was sent to Captain of the Independence. She was invited to address the Hegemony Council, not to surrender, not to be judged, but to speak as the representative of the human species. Did not want to go. She wanted to stay on 452B and make sure the colony was safe and that no ships were coming back. But James told her the truth. You have to go, he said, because what you did here, it changed things. Not just for us, for everyone. You have to see this through. Brought Stephen Park with her. He understood science and could speak to the counselors about the new relationships that humans wanted to build. She brought because any negotiations about technology and trade would need someone who understood engineering. She brought because the counselors needed to understand that humans were warriors too, and that they respected strength and courage. And she brought James because he was her second in command, and because he had proven that he could do the impossible. The 4 of them stood in the Hegemony Council chamber. The 5 counselors looked down at them from their raised seats. This was a space designed to show power and dominance. It was designed to make visitors feel small and weak. But did not feel small. She felt like a person who had survived the unsurvivable. She felt like someone who had fought against impossible odds and won. I am Captain, she said. Her voice was clear and strong. I speak for the human species. We have not come here to ask for your permission to exist. We have not come here to promise that we will follow your rules and live in the places you allow us to live. We have come here to tell you what we are and to ask if you are willing to understand us. She paused and looked at each counselor. We are a young species, said. We are not as advanced as you are. We do not have your weapons or your technology, but we are something that you have forgotten how to be. We are people who will fight for our families. We are people who will choose death over slavery. We are people who will find new ways and new ideas when old ways fail. We are people who believe that life is worth fighting for. Counselor Vex leaned forward. What are you asking for? A seat at the table, said. We want to be partners in the Hegemony Council. We want to have a voice in decisions that affect the galaxy. We want to trade freely with other species. We want to grow without fear of being crushed by the powerful. The counselor laughed. You should be grateful that we do not order your immediate execution. You destroyed a warship. You killed thousands, and you come to us asking for equality." "I come to you knowing the truth," said. "We are not equal yet. You have power that we do not have, but we have something that your species has lost. We have hope, we have belief, we have the ability to inspire others, and we have proven that we will not be conquered." The counselor spoke. "I propose a trial period. Humans are granted provisional membership in the Hegemony Council. In 1 year, we will review this decision and determine if it was wise." "I propose recognition," Counselor Vex said. "Full recognition and full membership. We owe this species nothing less." The vote was taken. 4 counselors voted for Vex's proposal. The abstained, which meant he was allowing the measure to pass without his approval. Humanity was now part of the Hegemony Council. Within the year, 7 other younger species that the Council had tried to control demanded their own seats. The old order that had lasted for 10,000 years was crumbling. Returned to the colony and to her people, she was no longer just a ship captain. She was a representative of a new power in the galaxy. She was a symbol of what humans could become. On the first anniversary of the attack, the colony held a celebration. There were 3,000 people at 452B now, and more ships were arriving every week. Humans from other worlds were coming to see the place where the impossible had happened, where a desperate people had fought back against the greatest powers in the galaxy and won. Stood on the observation platform with James, they watched the stars spread out above them. In the distance, they could see ships from a dozen different species approaching the planet. Ships that came in peace. Ships that came to trade. Ships that came because they had learned that humans were not to be conquered or controlled. "Do you think it is really over?" James asked. Thought about the empire was vast. They would not be satisfied with this defeat. They would not accept being challenged by a young human species. Somewhere out there they were planning, rebuilding, preparing for a war that would be bigger than the first one. "No," said. "It is not over. This is just the beginning, but we have proven something that matters. We have proven that humans will not break. We have proven that we will not surrender, and that changes everything." The celebration continued in the colony below. Children played. Adults talked and laughed. People remembered the ones who had died fighting for their freedom. They remembered James and Maria and Henry and Stephen Park and all the others who had stood up when they could have hidden. And they looked forward to a future that was uncertain and dangerous and full of challenges that no one could predict. But it was a future that they would face together. A future where humanity had its place among the stars. A future where no one had survived after facing humans because humans fought not for conquest, but for each other. And that made them stronger than anything the galaxy could throw at them. The story of 452B would be told in 1,000 different worlds. It would be told by humans to inspire their young. It would be told by aliens to warn their people. It would be told as a story of what happens when a species discovers that surrender is not the only choice. That courage and unity and love for family are weapons more powerful than any weapon made of metal or energy. The message was simple, and it was profound. No one survived after facing humans because humanity refused to die as slaves.